You're listening to Greater Good Radio Hawaii. Please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. Today's guest is Gary Slovin, Managing Partner of Goodsill, Anderson, Quinn Stifel, LLP. Gary is currently the President of the Board of Directors for the Honolulu Zoo and is a board member of Helping Hands Hawaii. Gary, you mentioned that you're going to get, more fulfillment or satisfaction, not necessarily the pay when getting involved in the community. But for a lot of younger people that are just starting their careers out or kind of in the midst of their careers but really still trying to make it to the top, some of them feel like, I need to make all the money first before giving back. What's your view on that, and how would you encourage people that, yes, you do need to make money, but also giving back to the community is very important?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think that's a challenge that young people face. Certainly in a law firm, the young lawyers there do have to focus on training and developing their skills. I mean, that's really key. If you don't develop your skills as a lawyer, and I'm sure this is true of other people in other workplaces as well, if you don't develop those skills in those early years, you're going to have a very difficult time being successful in your profession. If you're not successful in your profession, then you're going to have trouble accomplishing other things, including being in the community. So you do have to be practical. And I think one of the advice I give to young lawyers on that is that don't get yourself overextended. One of the things you sometimes see is that the young lawyers, certainly in our firm, they're a great group of people. They're very committed to the profession, they're committed to the community, and they have a lot of energy. And you can find yourself biting off more than you can do. Then it gets spread too thin, and then you don't do anything really well. So, to me, you get yourself introduced at a young age. I do think that in Hawaii, the way law is practiced, very different from the mainland, the law firms here, certainly ours, give you the time to get involved in the community. We don't expect young lawyers to be as involved, say, as I am at this point in my career. But I think if you don't start getting involved early, there's certain habits that you will never develop, and maybe you'll never get involved in the community. I mean, there are some people that just never do it when they're young, and they never really do give back to the community. So I do think there's a balance that can be achieved, and I think you have to try to achieve that.
And then how do you achieve the balance, though? Is there a certain mix that you're looking for?
You're talking about in my own life or
just in general?
In general?
Walter Dodds came on, he said he spent 40 hours a week outside of his duties as CEO of his company and his other for-profit board duties in the community. I mean, to some of us, that's like, whoa, kind of out there, but...
Yeah, I think that's probably an extreme, and I do think you have to respect the individual situations of each person. If you're talking about a young lawyer who's starting out, who's needing to bill 37 or 38 hours every week, and you got to spend probably 50 hours a week in the office in order to do that and learn your craft, and you have, say, a young family, which many of them do, or other, personal interests, there isn't any way you could spend that amount of time and do both. So when I was a young lawyer practicing, first getting started in Hawaii, I didn't spend as much time as I do now, and I don't keep that close track of it, to be honest about it, but I spend a lot more time in community activities now than I did when I was younger. So you have to respect each individual's lifestyle and responsibilities. But I do think that for young people to get involved starts a habit that lasts. And that doesn't have to involve more than, a few hours a week or even a month. It really doesn't. There are a lot of situations where people can volunteer. There's a lot of volunteer help needed, where any amount you volunteer is going to be welcomed. And then at least that kind of gets you started, as well as contributing. I mean, somebody who serves on a board, let's say a lawyer serves on a board, and the board meets once a month, and they go over issues. That lawyer's insights and experience and training can help that board do a better job. That may only involve 2 or 3 hours a month, but it's still valuable. It's still getting out there. It's still getting in the habit of contributing something beyond just your own reward.
Do you have any kind of inspirational story you can share where, it really brings together why this makes a difference?
I mean, there are a couple, really, to me. I mean, one most recent has to do with the Zoo Society, where I'm president, and we're trying to accomplish certain things there. I mean, the main thing we're trying to accomplish is to move the zoo toward what we call a kind of a partnership, where the zoo and the city together, manage the zoo. This has been done in many other cities, and we're trying to move in that direction because we want to try to save the zoo, and maybe we could talk more about that later. But one specific area we worked on that I thought was an example of what volunteers can accomplish has to do with Rusty, the orangutan. As most people know in the community, the city and others struggled for 7 years to find a home for Rusty. It was a problem in the community. It was an embarrassment in a way. And then, through a series of circumstances, the people who had decided to finally go ahead and build it, they called me one night and said, you know what, we're not going to go ahead after all. We're dropping out. I said, my God, that's going to be terrible. I said, well, that's the way it is. How about you guys taking it over? We didn't have the experience. We didn't have the money, but we thought it was the right thing to do. So I talked to the vice president that night, and I said, Mark, let's go ahead and do this. I think we can do it. The community needs it. Let's just do it. The board supported us. We had the Rusty enclosure built to a world-class standard within 4 months. So what it had taken 7 years to do through government and various foundations, we were able to do in 4 months. How did we do that? We did it because we took a position, and then the community and volunteers all gathered together, and this was pretty much all done by volunteers, including some folks who said, we'll put on a dinner to raise some of the money. And people said, there's no way you can do a dinner in that amount of time and raise that money. It can't be done. I said, well, we don't have much of a choice. So we went ahead and did it, and we raised a heck of a lot of money. So I think it was a case where volunteers taking a position on an important issue in the community were able, by taking that position and taking some risk, able to galvanize other volunteers to come into play and make that happen. So I think that, to me, was an example of what volunteers can accomplish.
Thanks for joining us today on Greater Good Radio. For more information or a transcript of today's show, please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. This is your host, Evan Leong and Carrie Leong, saying please join us next time for another episode of Greater Good Radio, Hawaii.